Women empowerment became essential to society. Today, heading off the leading positions as a female is considered as a social norm in most of the countries around the globe. Uzbekistan is no exception. The country has made significant reforms and improvements in the policy-making system to involve more women in the economic and social spheres of the country. However, despite the successful reforms, we still cannot see more women being involved in the system. So, what is the reason for that? Are there any challenges or obstacles that women face? Is there still a gender gap in the policy-making of the country? We're going to analyze this and find out the answers to all these questions in the following report. Uzbekistan has been known to have one of the lowest rates of women's participation in politics in Central Asia. 10 years ago, women's representation in Uzbekistan's political arena was minimal. According to the data collected by the Inter-Parliamentary Union, women made up only 16.7% of the country's parliament in 2011. Several factors played a role in that situation. During that period, Uzbekistan's policy mostly focused on economy and security. Another factor is social barrier. Throughout the history, Uzbek women were known as the keepers of hearth, so they mostly dedicated their lifetime for taking care for their children and family. This led to another factor, which is the lack of education. They were expected to take care of their families and children, to give them the proper education, so they didn't really focus on getting a higher education themselves. Despite the challenges, there were some positive changes in the political landscape for women in Uzbekistan. In 2010, the government established Women's Committee of Uzbekistan to promote gender equality and women's rights. Back to early days of our culture, while Uzbek women devoted most of their lives to the family, they also tried to be an active part of society. In the past decade, women were already active in entrepreneurship, in political activity. We have seen how women have tried to be nominated for government positions in political parties, participation in the democratic transformation of Uzbekistan. But the conditions under which they were trying to realize themselves, of course, does not compare with what is happening in our country now. For example, if we compare the activities of the committee, at that time Women's Committee was considered as a public organization and there was no financial support like now. There was no fund to support women, to help them in community activities and so on. Today the committee has a fund to support women and this makes it much easier to implement certain projects. Uzbekistan has made significant strides in promoting gender equality and women's empowerment, particularly in the political sphere. Women in Uzbekistan are increasingly taking up leadership positions in politics, challenging traditional gender roles and breaking down barriers to women's participation in decision-making processes. One noticeable example is the appointment of Tanzila Narbayeva as the chairperson of Senate of Olay Majlis in January 2021. This appointment made her the first woman in the history of Uzbekistan to hold this position. In addition to Narbayeva's appointment, women make up 30% of the members of parliament, which surpasses the global average of 25%. Foreign representatives also observe the ongoing reforms of Uzbekistan. We have talked to one of them that has some views on these changes.
I arrived in Uzbekistan back in 2019 and for me it has been an exciting journey in general and particularly to witness the depth and the scope of the reforms that are happening and particularly those related to the gender equality. I have witnessed myself the adoption of the two capital laws on gender equality and was celebrating together with many that development. But also over the years I have seen how the topic of gender equality becomes a topic within the society and it's actively, publicly discussed. Sometimes people disagree or challenge some of the aspects of gender equality, but it was important that that became a topic that is discussed. And recently, particularly, it's so great to see young activists and women of Uzbekistan standing for their rights and actively asking and promoting for some of the aspects of gender equality. So all of that has been really great to witness. Yes, great progress has been done over the past few years, but of course still much more remains to be done, being it a policy change, being it a new legislation to be adopted, or breaking with the traditional stereotypes, with the norms, social norms that prevent women taking full action, full participation in any aspect of the life, because we know well, and there is a strong evidence globally, and in Uzbekistan, in fact, that sustainable development is just not possible without active participation of women as well.
Women to be involved in the politics, But why women? Why is it important to include women in the system? Matilda Zimovska gave an interesting comment on that.
When women are leading a country or leading on some area, the country is less likely to get into a war or less likely to breach some of the human rights issues. Usually the involvement of women in politics is related to less corruption. And then in many areas as well championing the gender equality. It's of course one of the issues on which women are working on. And to be honest, we have seen it in Uzbekistan as well. We have been all so excited to see, for example, the leadership of Madame Tanzila Narbayeva when it came to the recent adoption of the legislation that criminalized the gender-based violence and other forms of sexualized violence, to which we applaud it very much.
According to Dimovska, there are several ways to attract more Uzbek women into politics. In fact, some of them are already being implemented in the government's policy. One of the ways is that practiced globally is introducing mandatory gender quotas when nominating candidates for elections.
And we have seen that, because of that in Uzbekistan, we at the moment have 32 women parliamentarians, or Uzbekistan is ranking at the 45th place in terms of women in politics, the ranking that is being done by the International Interparliamentarian Union in 2021. So that was because this quota system for the elections has been applied. The other way is to introduce those type of quotas within a political party, so that the political party, the representation becomes more diverse, reflective of the society, so that the politics goes beyond the typical stereotype of masculine kind of a politics. And some parties in the world, they are, for example, putting in place special funds that would help women to deal with some other issues, like taking care of their children while they are occupied with party-related work.
Another important approach is implementation of civil society organizations that will promote the gender equality and serve as mentors and motivation for women who want to enter this sphere. The conduction of trainings and guidance programs will result in higher confidence in those women. They will be able to articulate their political positions and step by step get involved more in the politics. Education is certainly one of the most essential parts that women should have when entering politics. However, there are other factors that are equally important to have when entering the system. These include charisma, social capital, meaning that ability to listen and engage in the discussion, and leadership skills. The question arises here, is it really important to have political experience in order to enter the system?
The question is, what does it mean? How do you qualify and how do we understand experience in politics? What it is about? Is it about having interpersonal and communication skills? Is it kind of having emotional intelligence, empathy for others, being able to negotiate, to manage things? And I'm asking these questions because basically women are already having those type of skills. They are applying in their daily lives. They are applying that when they are taking care of their families and their children. So that was what I wanted to say is if women can manage their family, they can manage politics. You have it all. You have it all. You just need to be aware of it and to be confident. Yeah. I remember myself self-doubting in many steps. Now I see that it's important to have it clear in your mind that when your heart is on the right place, you be sure that you are doing right and be confident of that.
So, the conditions are created. The female policymaking looks to be promising. We hope that these actions will encourage the young Uzbek girls and women to be actively involved in the system and show the female representation of Uzbekistan on international arena.